This episode is sponsored by Magic Mind and Wix Studio.
When is the last time you listened to a podcast about web development, web design, and small business and didn't fall asleep? Yes, we cover web development, web design, and small business, but like actual human beings with personalities. If you're a beginner, we're not going to talk over your head. It's more like asking your buddy for help. We have guests, we have fun, and let me tell you, these two can get off on a tangent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to HTML All the Things Podcast. This is Matt Lawrence and Mike Curran.
That's right, everybody. We are back, and this is the HTML All the Things Podcast. This episode is titled Open Source is Dead. It almost sounds a bit Halloween themed. Something's dead, RIP, RIP, whatever. But in this episode, we're going to be talking about the WordPress sort of drama, the WordPress situation. Now, I do want to preface this, and Mike's going to preface this as well, by saying that we are not a newscast. We, got some information from articles, got some information from social media. So this is not a, newscast where everything's been fact-checked to the nine. So we may get some things incorrect or whatever, but this is kind of the experience that I guess the general user, the general developer is experiencing if they were to dive into any of this, because that's what we basically did some reading, did some social media prodding, looking around, that sort of thing. So if this sounds interesting to you and you want to support the show, you can go check us out on the Patreon, leave a review or rating on your podcast app, join us in our Discord server, or share this with your friends. Mike, you have this breakdown for us, so please take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the title, I want to say, is a bit sensationalized. I don't think open source is fully dead. I don't think it's on, I guess, a direct path to death, but I think it's starting to splinter, right? I think that's what this episode is about. There's some issues with it. And everyone has experienced issues with open source. If you've been in development for long enough, you've experienced your library, whatever you're using, being deprecated. You've experienced a rogue maintainer going in and putting in some random crap into the library and breaking your application. You've probably experienced many other situations with open source, maybe just a really big asshole of a maintainer that doesn't resolve issues, that berates people. I've seen it all at this point with open source. Open source is not first of all, I love open source, and I think it is an amazing part of our ecosystem, and I think it's an integral part, super important part. But it is not all, amazing, right? There's definitely some serious issues with it and have been from the beginning, right? You're asking people to contribute for free. You're asking people to maintain a project for their entire lives. There's so many issues with open source, but overall it's worked very well. And it's been the thing that we've built on top of in the web development industry. Okay. So that's what I want to preface this with. The other thing I want to preface is, and kind of double down what Matt said, is we're going to be talking a lot about a specific person in the open source community, Matt Mullenweg. I'll explain who he is, but what I want to say is that I've tried to fact check everything that I have here. I've done my best. My best is probably not good enough. That's what I want to say. I'm not a journalist. I am a web developer. And with that caveat, I just want to be clear that some of what I might say is wrong. Okay? And I just want to make that clear. So don't take my word as gospel, but I will be giving as best of a recount of what's been going on with the WordPress situation and why it directly affects you, even if you think it doesn't. That's what I really want to get out of this, is that some people think WordPress is not important, but it most definitely is. And the other part of this conversation, when we get to it, is I want to talk about open source as a whole outside of the WordPress discussion and what I think is happening in the industry. There's a few little indicators for me that there's definitely a change in mindset about these big open source projects that need constant maintenance and constant upkeep, and people trying to profit from that. So let's get right into it. What is happening with WordPress? Before we jump directly into the drama, I do want to give a little bit of a preface on WordPress, because I don't think everyone understands WordPress as a whole, especially new developers that have been coming into the industry and learning React and Vue and stuff like that. WordPress to them is like legacy technology, right? Well, there's two sides of WordPress. There's the WordPress.org side. This is the organization that is kind of a nonprofit that owns the open source WordPress platform, right? WordPress is open source. It can be taken and used by anyone. It can be taken and profited with use by anyone. The licensing allows you to do pretty much anything. The only thing you can't do is fork WordPress and make changes to it without contributing back to the original WordPress. That's the GPL licensing. It's an important note because people talk about, like, with all this drama, forking WordPress. There is some intricacy there. You can't just fork it and continue on living your life. You will have to contribute anything you contribute to your fork back into WordPress open source project as well. So whether or not that matters, I'm not sure yet, but that is an important kind of caveat.
I have a question there, actually. Sorry. So, like, I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, so-and-so, this company, that company, this person, that person should take WordPress, fork it, and go another direction." And I've heard this, not as loudly, because this, obviously, we're in the kind of drama phase right now as of recording this. But one of the things that I've heard this for is some people do disagree with Gutenberg and how WordPress is going more toward the page builder side of things. And some people say, hey, they're not going toward the page builder fast enough. Some people are saying, hey, like, this should be, you should be able to turn this off, things like that. And then some people will use the metric of how many people have installed and use what they call the WordPress Classic Editor over top of, sort of the Gutenberg block. I think it might be called Block Builder, whatever they want to call it, but it's the Gutenberg sort of built into WordPress page builder. And so, like, a lot of, I guess like what I'm getting at is, like, some people say, hey, so-and-so has such a big WordPress business, or a business that uses WordPress so much, fork it and maybe rip all this Gutenberg stuff out and, like, make this other CMS effectively, right? And so it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you can't necessarily do that. So, like, I guess my question there is like, do you think that that's possible? And also, because this is the first I've heard about this thing. I've only ever heard about people saying, yo, fork it and just go do what you want. I haven't heard about this sort of, like, contribute back to the community thing. Because one question I have is, like, what if someone forks it and then makes a feature that WordPress itself wouldn't agree with? Like, they'd be like, yo, like, and not in a controversial way. I mean, hey, I don't like how they have their button layout, right? Like a UX disagreement. I don't like that. I'm not going to put that into WordPress for everybody.
Very good question. I don't have an exact answer for it. This is my interpretation of what would happen. If you contribute a feature to your version of WordPress, your obligation is to create a pull request back into WordPress. WordPress has no responsibility to actually, like, merge in that feature. And again, I'm not an expert in licensing, but that's how I understand it, is that this GPL license allows a company to put a licensing on their software, allowing people to fork it, but they have to the people that fork it have to provide back all the features that they do. They don't have to actually merge those features in if they don't want to. Obvious. Like, I mean, like, this one kind of sounds obvious, because if someone were to fork it and it introduced malicious code and it's required for them to put it back in, like, obviously they're not going to do that. So there has to be this caveat, and it makes sense. So that whatever you build, no matter how complicated it is, you have to merge it back in, but WordPress will have to accept that merge and deal with the consequences of whatever that feature is.
I mean, that does make a lot of sense, because, I mean, there's some staple plugins, which, I mean, we're going to mention one of them, ACF, which is Advanced Custom Fields, but there's some sort of staple plugins that clearly have, seen WordPress, whether it's WordPress back in the day before the page building stuff, or WordPress now even, and they go, you know what, like, I think I could do this, not necessarily better, but different. And so you kind of get these, like, really huge ecosystems now. Now, I'm not saying that they're forking WordPress and doing that, but what I mean is like, someone who may make a fork may have the same idea and go, you know what, I'd like to take WordPress in a different direction, like a totally different direction, and use it only as a headless CMS. And I'd like to see that. It's not like WordPress is going to be like, you know what, yeah, let's do that. Merge all of those, like, those changes in, and then be like, by the way, we have no plugins or anything anymore. It's just headless. it's just headless. Like, that would be a complete and utter chaos on the web admin side of things.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Like, so it's avoiding the chaos, but giving some onus to the people that own the actual license or own the actual open source to get the features that people contribute back. Anyway, aside from that, one thing I do want to clarify is, again, there's WordPress.org, which we just talked about. That's the open source nonprofit foundation that controls and maintains the open source WordPress repo. There's a separate company and a separate WordPress site called WordPress.com, which is now, this is a host for WordPress, right? This is, your typical web host that is specifically designed to host WordPress sites. This is technically owned by the WordPress.org organization, or a separate company called Automatic, I should be more clear about, that is also running the WordPress.org organization, right? So it's owned by the creators of WordPress. WordPress.com is a for-profit company. It is a very big company that's worth $7 billion, and I'll get to that in a second. But WordPress.com is not an open source thing. It is absolutely a for-profit company, and it makes a ton of money and has a big impact in the industry. Whether it's good or not, I don't know. I have never used it. I've heard bad things here and there about their hosting strategies and how, like, the features that they provide, but I haven't used it personally. I don't think, Matt, you've used it as well. We use other stuff to host WordPress, not WordPress.com, but it is a significant player in the game.
Oh, of course. Something like an Elementor, like Elementor is one of those, not a fork, but like a different way of page building. And it's a huge ecosystem by their own mind, or in their own right. And they also do hosting. And so Elementor is not WordPress. Like, they're not the same company, right? Like, Elementor is built on top of WordPress. But just going to WordPress.com here, it's a very attractive offering. Like, I'm just on there right now looking at it. WordPress without limits, everything you need to build and grow any website all in one place. Host with the best, room to grow. It literally says here, 0 downtime, no limits. And I'm taking little bits and pieces of some of the text here. Flexible storage, 4K videos, photos, audio, all in one place. Bring it with you. Fast data transfer and performance come as standard with our global CDN. Claim your home on the web. There's themes here, like some pretty attractive looking themes. I can literally hover over it. It literally says start with this theme. So this thing, is kind of, for lack of a better way to say it, this thing's done to the nuts.
Yeah.
And is ready to go. And like, WordPress also, by their own right, has their own ecosystem. Like, if you scroll down, download the app on the App Store, download on Google Play. So like, I'm aware of this stuff, but to someone who's like, how do I make website? If someone suggests WordPress, you go to WordPress.com and you're like, I just want to write about like watches. Like, I don't know, that's my hobby. I want to write about watches. I like watches. This is pretty attractive. Hey, edit from your phone. Hey, use this theme. Hey, let's get you started. Hey, if your site grows to 2 billion blah, 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 blahs, then we'll be able to handle it. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Sign me up, right? Click the get starting button.
Yep, exactly. And that's the thing. So it's a fully functional, massive WordPress hosting site. Okay. Makes a ton of money. Now, why are we talking about WordPress? That's another thing I wanted to bring up, right? Like, we broke it down. WordPress is a CMS. I just want to clarify that. I hope everyone knows what WordPress is that's listening to this podcast, but WordPress is the most popular content management system on the internet, bar none. There's no exact number as far as I understand it, but I've seen numbers between 40 and 50% is how much it powers the internet, to 40 to 50% of it. Okay, just imagine the scale of that. And just to compare it to something that we talk about a ton of, right? We don't talk about WordPress very much. We talk about it sometimes. What we do talk about is frameworks like JavaScript frameworks, React, Vue, and stuff like that. The total combined number for how the percentage of what those frameworks power on the internet is about 5%. Okay? And we talk about them all the time. No one really talks about WordPress anymore. It powers the majority of the internet. So that's why this is important. Like, WordPress is a very significant player in this game, the most significant player in this game. It's a big business. It's an open source framework that everyone has been a part of for as long as we've been in the industry. Like, WordPress has been the standard go-to. Like, if you need a blog, if you need a site that's editable, go to there. Regular people outside of web development will consistently be like, we want a WordPress site. They have no idea what WordPress really is. They just know that it's that editable thing that allows them to edit the website. It's a brand that's transcended development. That's how big this thing is. There's not that many out there. I go ask someone what the heck React is outside of your little bubble, your little tech bubble. They'll be like, the word React? Like, what are you talking about? Go ask someone what Vercel is, $1 billion web framework company, right? No one will know what that is. But go ask someone what WordPress is. Yeah, that's probably going to know what WordPress is. Oh, it's that editable thing. Like I can edit my site. I can create a site for free, whatever.
And it goes beyond that too. Like, I mean, I wanted to just double check, so I just asked ChatGPT to confirm. But WooCommerce is an absolutely huge plugin that was originally third party, and it was done by a company called Woo Themes. And then in 2015, Automatic, which is the parent company, whatever, blah blah blah, that we're talking about, they have actually purchased it. And so like this is a huge thing. Like think about it in the way of like some people would roll their eyes and say WordPress is just for websites, right? Oh, it's just for blogging. It's just for people that want ad revenue through that. But then add on e-commerce and like their involvement, let's say, with e-commerce, it's like, that's kind of crazy. Their tendrils are everywhere. Like it's a heck of a lot of the websites out there. It's going to be a heck of a lot of the e-commerce out there. Like the scale of this is just huge. It's just massive.
Yeah, it's hard to understate. And this is why we are kind of shocked at the situation that's arisen, because usually WordPress is the stability, right? It's the thing that people refer to as the boring technology, and the boring, it's not in the news. It's just there, right? So when drama started happening on WordPress, drama happens in web development all the time. We know that. But when drama started happening with WordPress, people started to be like, what the hell is going on? Like, what is actually happening? And that's what I want to dive into right now. First off, I want to kind of outline who we're going to be talking about. This is a person named Matt Mullenweg. He's the co-founder of WordPress, founded it, I think it was 2003 or something like that, 2004, like a long ass time ago. It was a fork of another CMS before that. It wasn't like, built from scratch. It was a fork of something else. This is actually pretty important to know. Like this was an open source project built on top of an open source project. Matt then went on to found a company called Automatic, which we talked about before, owns WordPress.com, is in charge of WordPress.org. Like he is the sole kind of key holder right now for the WordPress ecosystem. Like whatever he says essentially will go. Like he is the man, the CEO of WordPress, if you want to call it, right? Automatic is valued at $7 billion. This is not a small company. This is a massive corporation, okay? They are a huge advocate, or he is, particularly Matt, is a huge advocate of open source software. I mean, he's been building open source software for way longer than I've been in the industry. He knows open source, right? And other than some minor drama, he had this weird thing where he got into a public fight with someone, and to spite them, he bought a super expensive domain and like pointed it at, it was a weird thing. I don't want to get too far into it because I don't think it really matters in this conversation. But for the most part, he's stayed out of the news. He's been more of an advocate than anything else. He's built this massive system that people have used for a decade now, like over like 2 decades, essentially, like 2 decades of using a stable system. So people had no problem with Matt. Like Matt's a cool guy, like just did his own thing. He's a billionaire, like all good. Now, what happened? I have to describe who we're going to be kind of who the opposition is in this story to Matt. I want to say I'm not on Matt's side in this story. There are some arguments that he's making that maybe are true, but I don't agree with pretty much any of his statements. WP Engine is a competitor to WordPress.com. So they're a very similar system that where you can go and quickly spin up a WordPress site. They will host it for you. They will scale it for you. They'll do all the stuff that WordPress.com will do. They are also a very big site as well. So if we're talking comparison, I think people are saying that WP Engine is actually more like bigger than WordPress.com. I think they host more of the WordPress ecosystem. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it sounds like they are a huge player in that ecosystem. There's some other big players like Bluehost and stuff like that. There's other hosting platforms for WordPress out there, right? Like any PHP host can host WordPress, first of all, right? It's not just these two behemoths, but these two behemoths are the ones that we're going to be talking about. What happened is that Matt accused them, and he's been kind of harking on them in private for a while, apparently. But now he's full on publicly accused them of profiting from WordPress, the WordPress open source project, without giving anything back. Okay, that's where this WP Engine comes in. Now, side note for WP Engine, not really a side note, actually a pretty main note. They have created or bought two of the most popular WordPress plugins on the market. One of them, Matt mentioned, Advanced Custom Fields, ACF. The other one, very important project called WP GraphQL. WP GraphQL is a project that I think most people have integrated into WordPress endpoints, especially people that are using the WordPress CMS with a app of like a front end that's not WordPress. It's an easy way to digest WordPress content, take it and put it anywhere on the web, right? So if you have, for instance, like a mobile app that needs to access your WordPress content, you're probably going to use something like WP GraphQL to access that content in an easy way, in an easy, like type safe way. Now, what happened with all this, right? Matt publicly called out WP Engine for not contributing enough to the open source. He called them out in both a monetary way. So he's saying that he wants 8% of their profits arbitrarily, right? Like there's no legality to this. He's just asking for 8% of WP Engine's profits as the right thing to do. And he's also obviously filed a lawsuit against them because they're using the WP WordPress trademark in the wrong way. This lawsuit is fraught, in my opinion. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but because there was like the situation where on WordPress.org site, there is a guide on how you can use the WordPress name, and WP was allowed to be used. And after Matt essentially called out WP Engine, there was an amendment to be made, like saying not for everyone but WP Engine, which is ridiculous in my opinion. Like you can't do that. He also, not only monetarily, Matt also is saying that they should be contributing to the code of WordPress. Now, I think the mention was like 5% of an engineer's time should go back to the core WordPress open source project. So every engineer that the WP Engine hires should, invest 5% of their time or something like that into the WordPress project, commit, like do lines of code. He keeps mentioning this like lines of code thing where like, look how many lines of code we've contributed, like WordPress.org or WordPress.com to the WordPress project. Obviously, they're contributing the most because they are the ones that own it. Like, I don't understand this argument of everyone should be contributing just as much or even remotely comparable to them. They are the ones that own the project. Obviously, they're going to be the ones that are contributing the most. Like, I don't get that argument. And the second thing is that he's essentially putting this in the terms of service of WordPress, saying that everyone should be doing this. Not enforceable. He keeps saying it's not enforceable, but everyone should be doing this. This is a huge weird caveat with open source. Like open source has never demanded this kind of stuff, right? This is why the title open source is dead, because this is moving away from what open source is. Open source is usually maintained by the most hardcore people that, first of all, you can trust to build the project and maintain it in the right way. But second of all, don't expect everyone using an open source project to contribute back to it. Expecting everyone to use an open source project, everyone that uses an open source project to continually contribute back to that open source project is a maniac's way of doing open source. Like that is just insanity, right? Like you're talking, you're going to have pull requests coming in thousands a day for WordPress. That's what he's expecting. But what the other weird part of this whole thing is, and I unfortunately haven't been able to verify this, but I did hear about it. Everyone keeps saying that WordPress is this stable, stable development, everyone uses it and it doesn't change much, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's not true. Apparently 80% of WordPress's code has been rewritten in the past 12 months. 80%. That is an absolutely ludicrous amount of rewriting that's being done. The weird thing is that I barely notice a difference when I'm using a WordPress site or doing anything on WordPress other than negatively maybe. Like I don't understand what's going on over there and why they're using this like lines of code as an argument for people to contribute to WordPress. And when I say people, I should be clear that Matt is very much specifically and only calling out WP Engine here, which is he keeps throwing this back as the caveat. He's like, I'm not asking anyone else to do this. I'm just asking them to do it. But then the argument against that is like, well, you could turn around and ask Joe McGee to do that tomorrow. He's like, well, no, I won't do that. I was like, how can we trust you? Like, what are we putting your trust into that you won't go around and start asking everyone to start doing this and paying you 8% profits on everything they do with WordPress with there's no reason for it. Like, there's no like guarantee. Like why would we give you 8% profits? It's an open source project. It doesn't make any sense. Now, to kind of defend Matt a tiny bit, right? WP Engine is making a shit ton of money. They're VC funded, or no, private equity funded, like billions of dollars. They have a lot of money. Should they be contributing more to WordPress as a whole, because WordPress is the thing that is funding their entire ecosystem? Like WordPress is their livelihood. WP Engine, I want to be clear here. They don't have any other side projects. WordPress is their project that they're using. So they're making a ton of money from them, right? And they are absolutely using them to their nth degree. Should they be contributing more? There could be some argument there from like a purely selfish perspective from WP Engine side. Maybe they should be involved more just to make sure that their thing that they're building their livelihood on doesn't die, or is going in the direction they want it to go by giving them back some code or maybe even contributing from like some sort of monetary thing. It shouldn't be forced. It should be a logical decision that WP Engine comes up to. And the fact that they haven't done it is weird, in my opinion. I agree with that. I don't think what WP Engine is all like purely ethical in this argument. But the reality is that they can't be forced to do it. If they're forced to do it, then Joe McGee down the street that's hosting five WordPress websites is also going to be forced to do it at some point, or could also be forced to do it at some point. Like, we can't take a person's word for the fact that they're not going to force this just because they're not. And I want to be clear here that this isn't all just hand waving. There has been a lawsuit that's been, that Matt has put together against WP Engine, and the way more heinous thing that he did right off the top is he actually blocked access to WordPress.org, which is the thing that powers WordPress and all of its plugins, for anyone using WP Engine, which means all of WP Engine's customers, which is, remember, like potentially more than WordPress.com, can't update their plugins, or couldn't update their plugins. I don't know if he's lifted that or not. As far as I understand it, he still hasn't. So they can't update their plugins, which, as we know, can be a huge security vulnerability. Like the reason that WordPress has all of a sudden become a little bit more secure is because WordPress.org has decided to kind of host all of the plugins themselves instead of having them just be in the Wild West where you have to update them all manually. And they introduced this kind of like auto updating system. They introduced a way to do this whole update process for everyone that's using WordPress across any host. And that has kept the ecosystem in pretty good shape, like from a security perspective, over the last like 5 years. Because before that, as Matt knows, every WordPress website was constantly being hacked and stuff like that. Like, it was just harder to maintain because it was a little bit more Wild West in terms of plugins. Like, there wasn't a central database of plugins. It was just, or a central way to like update all of them. There was just kind of updating, every plugin kind of hosted their own server to update their own plugins. And that was a little bit too chaotic. So WordPress.org did a great thing by putting that all in a central server on WordPress.org, gave it to everyone for free. And yes, it does cost money to maintain that. And it's not an insignificant amount of money to maintain those like plugin servers, okay? Right? And that's another argument that Matt is making, is like they're using these plugin servers that we have and abusing them and not contributing enough back, and et cetera, et cetera. Again, I get it to a certain degree, but you're not asking that. Like, there was no transaction asked. Like, there was no premium version of this WordPress.org subscription. There was nothing stated. Matt was just hoping that everyone was just going to be like, oh, I'll just give you 8% of my profits, I guess. And when they didn't, he's just arbitrarily blocking a massive host. And remember, this isn't really it's affecting the host in a negative publicity kind of way, but it's more affecting the customers, the people using the host, that have nothing to do with this fight. Like, they just chose a host based on, cost or whatever, and now they can't update their plugins. So it's just, that part of it has been mind-boggling to me. And unfortunately, this is just the beginning.
Devs, this one's for you. I've got 30 seconds to tell you about Wix Studio, the web platform for agencies and enterprises. So here are a few things you can do in 30 seconds or less on Studio. Integrate, extend, and write custom scripts in a VS Code-based IDE. Leverage zero setup dev, test, and production environments. Ship faster with an AI code assistant. and work with Wix headless APIs on any tech stack. Time's up, but the list keeps going. Step into Wix Studio and see for yourself. Link in the show description and in the show notes. Yeah, like the thing that sucks about this too is like WordPress recently, like a lot of people have been talking about how stable it is. And I've built a couple of projects and maintained a couple of projects recently on WordPress and have only had a couple of, critical errors or, white screen of death, which I usually have much more whenever you're in WordPress. I feel like even if you mess up like a thing of CSS, sometimes I feel like it'll be like, oh, that's it. And then it'll crash. And those are becoming, few and far between. And I have heard just from people talking to me on social media that people have started making or turning on the automatic WordPress updates, which is awesome. And I mean, like you can update plugins without using like the sort of plugin sort of marketplace. Like you can do so with files, I believe, and then there's another way. I think I've done it with files for sure, but I think there may be other ways to do so. But like Mike's right, it's like if the sort of let's call it the Play Store, right, or the App Store is a better way maybe even to say it. It'd be like, how many people, if you downloaded an iPhone app, and this is not talking about WordPress now, but I'm going to like bring it back in. It's like if you have an iPhone and you download your bank's app. So let's just say it's like TD Bank, right? TD Canada Trust. Right now, you can go to the App Store and you could turn on automatic updates. The actual app itself could ask you to do an update if you don't have automatic and you haven't done them in a while. And that keeps that TD Bank app secure. And a banking app is something that you want to be secure. What if it was just like, no, we don't, the App Store is no longer allowing TD Bank to update, but don't worry, you can just go to the website and do this sort of manual process. Is there a process in place? Sure. How many people are not going to do that? How many people are not going to know how to do that? How many people are going to see if it, somehow pops up in the app and tells you? How many people are going to say, well, like, I don't know, like, ignore as long as they can, right? So it is like sort of a, they're kind of adding some bad UX to it for sure, like especially if they're still being blocked. And we're recording this comes out in a week or two. So like, the situation is really, really developing all over the place. But, if that natural update process is interrupted at any point, like that really sucks because that is going to hurt. It's not only, like Mike said, it's not only hurting, WordPress engine or WP engine, it's hurting like the customers, and it's also hurting the web admins, right? And the web admins themselves may be the customers or they may be hired on. And whereas before they could just rely on having, let's say a newsletter or something that lets them know, there's a big security vulnerability in Elementor or in this or in that or in this plugin, that plugin, ACF, this, that, please update. They just go, oh, shoot, no worries. Log in there, do maybe their staging or whatever they do for testing and update. And then more or less they can press update and it updates, right? That's what a lot of websites do. A lot of websites don't even have any sort of staging or anything. They just go, oh, there's updates, cool, and they just go and quickly do the updates. Now, I don't recommend that, but many people do that, and it does allow things to remain more secure. There's a reason why in Windows it's really hard to, maybe it's not even possible now because I haven't done any looking, to push updates back indefinitely. People used to have Windows 7. Windows 7, people will be like, I'm turning off updates, this is stupid. Goes, years and years and years go by. Someone just has Windows 7 at whatever version, and then they try to do something, and it's like, oh, shoot, I need to do an update in order to do this. They go to do it, and then Windows Update breaks because it's so outdated and it's so many problems, or maybe they get hacked, or maybe they get a virus, and this like virus is latching onto a security vulnerability in their version of Windows 7, whereas if they had just done regular updates, that virus may appear, but then it won't be able to latch onto that security hole, things like that. And so this does really suck for the consumer, and this is, I guess, really why we're talking about this in this episode is because these are like I can't help but envision these are two titans fighting over like a city, and like someone like even myself, I'm just like a citizen in the city being like, what is going on? And I may catch a stray, someone's going to catch a stray. It's true. It's like an Avengers movie, right? Where the heroes and the villain are having this huge fight and I might get crushed by a building, and I'm just like a random dude, just like it was like trying to go to work and was like, oh my God, and then all of a sudden, boom, something hits me. Cause like I'm right on the website right now. This is WordPress.com. This is the pricing chart. Under WordPress VIP, which is their enterprise tier, they have some social proofs listed here, and I'm not going to list them all, but there's some titans in here. This package starts at $25,000 US a year, starts at And they have names such as Slack, Samsung, TechCrunch, USA Today, Salesforce, Meta, Time, Intuit, which is the QuickBook guys, SiriusXM, Chevron, and there's more and more and more. Abercrombie and Fitch, News Corp, Al Jazeera. Like it just keeps going. And then I'm going to go over to WordPress, WP Engine now. I'm on WP Engine. They have the social proof sort of carousel going by. This is right on their homepage for Canada. Petco, CMA Awards, Pandora, White Gray, Instacart. And I've seen some other ones. I think American Eagle was in here. And like I said, it's slowly going through. It's like, this is a huge, like these are two massive titans, like battling it out for what? Like Tiffany and Co, are a part of this WP Engine stuff. This is a disaster. AMD, for those in tech that would recognize that, AMD and Yelp, like it's like these guys are fighting, and then Mike and I are like making websites for the local accountant or like the local like pet shop. Maybe like I used WordPress to help people through COVID, and I installed one or two self-checkout systems for like pickup. So like someone would go in and they wouldn't pay online, but they would like, do their order. And then they would show up in their car, and then someone would come out with a mask, get them to like pay with the credit card, and give them like car side service, whatever you want to call it. Curbside pickup is what it was normally called. I helped a couple of people during COVID just do WordPress with that. And it's like we're tiny. Like, I'm not saying we're like a victim in this, but it's like we're tiny, and it's like these two titans are arguing, and it's just like what's going to happen? If I was on WP Engine, I would be worried. I would also be worried if I was on WordPress.com. Are things going to completely explode? We don't know. Chances are they will not. There's no indication that things are going to be totally, taken offline or anything like that. There's no indication of that. But if you imagine running a major website like AmericanEagle.com just showed up here. AmericanEagle.com or Petco. If they're doing their e-commerce, because it doesn't say exactly like what they're doing with this service, but if they're doing their e-commerce through this, could you imagine being the admin being like, this may hurt us, and we do X amount of millions or hundreds of thousands or thousands of dollars a day. We better watch this, because are the suits above us going to be okay with us being like, yeah, it's just two huge companies warring and we're caught in the crossfire? Like the suits are probably going to be like, why the hell didn't you get us ready to leave?
That's the thing, exactly. So people are going to get caught if this continues to escalate, which like it might not, it might, we don't know yet. Again, it's fine, but it is escalating maybe less in the last couple days than it was before, but it is still going. Like there's nothing that's been resolved as of recording this, again, 2 weeks before you're listening to it, most likely. Now, like I said, when I mentioned, the whole lawsuit thing, cutting people off from being able to get updates, that was just the beginning. Like this is all just the beginning. After this happened, there was a couple other things, a couple other small things, like the blog post where Matt kind of announced his hatred of WP Engine, calling them like an evil organization. Like he went full out in his hatred of WP Engine, first of all. Like it wasn't like sugarcoated or anything like that. He hates them. And in that, he actually put the blog post not on his own site, not on WordPress.com. What he did was he put it into the admin panel of WordPress.org. Now, WordPress.org admin panel is actually used by pretty much everyone that logs into a WordPress site, especially like the blog posts there, because all those blog posts or historically, is just, here's an update to WordPress core. Here are the change logs to that WordPress core update. He put his fight with WP Engine into a blog post, into everyone's admin panel, even WP Engine customers. And that left obviously a very bad taste in WP Engine's mouth, plus all the other slander that he did, all the other legal crap that he threw at them. WP Engine founded a counter lawsuit to Matt against Automattic and Matt. So now there's two lawsuits going on. If I was a betting man, I would say that Matt's probably going to lose that one from the kind of research that I've done on it. But who knows? We'll see what the courts say. And because of all this public open fighting that's been happening, the calm environment inside of Automattic, which also houses a ton of developers that do a lot of work on WordPress, right? Like the Automattic developers, this is the whole argument that Matt's making, is that his developers contribute all these lines of code to WordPress. Those developers have started to leave in droves. I don't have a final number, but it's a significant enough portion of them to leave that it's going to affect WordPress development, in my opinion. There's a significant lack of developers right now at Automatic. So that sucks, right? Obviously, he's losing a lot of talent. He's probably losing a lot of legacy talent that we don't let that has been there for years and years and years because they don't want to be involved. Like they're working on WordPress because they don't want to be involved in all this other JavaScript or web development ecosystem bullshit. And now they're in the center of it, and they're the biggest platform. Like so, of course, it makes perfect sense for them to leave. To be fair to Matt, again, I think he handled their departures pretty well. I believe he gave them a pretty good compensation package, even though they were the ones departing. So, like, he does do good thing. Like, he's not, he's been a good guy for a long time. Like, to me, this just seems like either a vendetta, right? That he's taken way too far, or there's some sort of internal thing that we don't know about that he can't talk about. I don't know. Something happened, and it snapped Matt in half, and now he's gone completely rogue. I don't know what's actually going on, because the next thing here is ludicrous. I want to be clear on that. This next segment in this argument, or in this back and forth, is one of the craziest things that I've seen happen in open source probably ever. We talked about the ACF plugin before, right? Advanced Custom Fields. This plugin, I want to say, is used by almost every WordPress site. And to be fair to Matt doesn't like the fact that it's being used by every WordPress site because he thinks whatever he's built is enough to run WordPress. Almost everyone disagrees. ACF is kind of a requirement, almost like a built-in thing for WordPress. Remember, ACF is owned and operated by WP Engine. Okay? Now, what Matt did, which is crazy, is that he took the plugin, ACF, he claimed to have found a issue, like a security issue with it, claimed to have said that this issue needs to be patched ASAP, and to protect his customers, he needs to take over ownership of this plugin from the owner, WP Engine. And so what he did was he literally took a fork of ACF and replaced it with his own plugin called Secure Custom Fields. And now anyone that's using ACF, and I think Matt will chime in, we're one of those users. Anyone that's using ACF, if they hit update in their panel, this is not outside of by the way, this is outside of WP Engine. Anyone using ACF, any person in the entire world, if they hit update, they will be replaced with a plugin called Secure Custom Fields that technically has the ACF code in it, but is now owned by someone completely different. He literally stole a plugin from someone in plain sight and is trying to champion the fact that he should have done it, and it's good that he did it. Now, I think almost everyone disagrees with him on this, and he's still kind of buried deep inside of this whole thing. This was a step across every line that I've seen in open source, and this is the thing that got I was like everything up to this point was crazy. This is insanity.
One of the things I saw too was that it maintained the spin-off, or whatever you want to call it, and maintained the old product page for ACF, where it maintained the reviews, it maintained the support, all the things that the WordPress.org, the plugin side of thing, the plugin marketplace, this quote unquote new ACF, whatever you want to call it, it now it's taken over that page. If there was 100,000 downloads for ACF, and then 100,001 a day after they took it over or whatever they did, there's now it doesn't show one download, it shows 101 downloads. This is 100,001 downloads. It'd be like if I showed up to Google News on Google Play and I was for some reason I was able to do this, and I was just I don't like Google News, or there's a problem with it, there's a security problem, I'm gonna fix it, and then I'm just gonna take all that 100 million, 1 billion, whatever it is, downloads. I'll just take this. I'll take all these reviews. I'll take this little product page, and that's mine now.
Well, I'll give you I'll give you an even crazier example of something that is exactly relevant to this. If you're Google and all of a sudden you're fighting with Facebook, right? For whatever reason, they fight all the time, I think. And you're like, you know what? Screw it. You're on my Google Play Store. I'm yeeting your app, and I'm going to replace it with my own Facebook Google app. That is the same thing that just happened. That is the thing. Imagine that happening. Nuts. Just
that is a really good point. Yeah. Is if they're allowed to legally, if they're allowed to take ACF and make a new secure custom fields by forking it or whatever it is that they did, if assuming that doing that part of it was legal, then okay, okay, great and fine, but they need to restart, in my opinion, as a new plugin on WordPress. Like, you need to start a new one called Secure Custom Fields plugin. You need to, like, you know, advertise that. You need to put the money into it. You need to do whatever. Like, how many websites, like just websites alone, they'll talk about ACF in a guide or in any sort of content, and then they link to the ACF page on the WordPress plugin marketplace. How many websites, how many links now are going now to this Secure Custom Fields plugin? I don't have that number, but this is wild. Like, I read about this ACF thing, and then I read about them, you know, making it Secure Custom Fields, and I just kind of saw this on Threads, and it was just in passing, not a lot of details, and I was like, oh, whatever. And then I saw some people talking like, hey, like, by the way, like, you know, this is going to affect updates, this is going to affect this and that. I was like, affect updates? Like what happened? And then I got an email from ACF that said, yo, by the way, like, if you update your ACF, it's going to change. Like, if you just update it from the WordPress marketplace on the free version. Now, luckily, we're on the pro version on many of our sites, but on the free version, if we update that, it's going to like change over to like this Secure Custom Fields. It's like, wait, hang on, what's going on? Like, why is that the case?
Yep.
And then someone said on Threads, I do not know if this is real, but someone said on Threads that, like, he could do this with any plugin. He could do this with any plugin. Like, if you and I made a really killer slider plugin and he wanted it, he could technically, I guess, do it from a technical, like, standpoint. Whether that's legal, whether that's whatever, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. And whether that's even true, I don't know. But if it's true, that's crazy. Like, this Secure Custom Fields plugin thing is, to me, it's pretty wild. Especially since ACF recently, and when I say recently, I put an asterisk there. I think it's like within a year or two. One of the like the most iconic duos in WordPress was to have CPT UI, which is custom post types UI, and to have ACF, because ACF would bring the custom fields, and then CPT UI was custom post type, so it would allow you to make a custom post type. So basically, like, for an example, you may have something like, you know, your blog post, but then you may have another custom post type that's like, you know, events, and those events are, you know, put into some sort of like RSS feed, and people write out pretty well a blog post or whatever they want by filling out one of these new field types, and they could easily do so with custom fields. So you could put like a date field in there, a number field in there, whatever it is that they needed. And so you kind of create this really custom, really sort of nice experience. Recently, ACF updated to kind of take over the job of CPT UI. So it does the post types, and it also does, and I think it also does the migration from CPT UI, which I did, but it also does the advanced custom fields as well. I will say that on any WordPress site that I've made in the last 3 years, I've used CPT UI and ACF in both free and pro forms on the ACF side. So, like, this is a huge thing, even from my small sample size. Like, people use ACF. Like, people use ACF. People use these things. Like, this is like, to my opinion, this is kind of a big deal. Like, this is kind of wild.
Yeah, it's not kind of a big deal. It is a massive deal. And like you said, he could do this to anyone. And he's coming out and being like, I'm doing this because I'm helping the community, and I'm not going to do this to anyone. And his expectation is we all just take him at his word because he hasn't done this before. We can't do that. People can't do that. When you do it once, you've set a precedent. That's it. That's what you do now. That's how life works, unfortunately, Matt. I'm sorry to say this, but you have now put yourself in the position where you steal people's plugins, period. There's no other, you can't hand wave away that. You own it. Like, I've stolen this plugin. I might do it in the future. Great. Everyone can just move on their fairy way. That's what you do. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality that we're living in. So a couple of other things that happened, just to wrap it up kind of quickly, because there's more, obviously. There's even more that I'm not going to mention because it's just outlandish and whatever. One thing he did, again, to spite WP Engine, is on the WordPress.org login, which is, again, used by everyone, including WP Engine customers, he put a checkbox that stated, to log in, you must not be associated with WP Engine in any way, shape, or form monetarily.
I saw this too.
Crazy.
This is wild.
Like, who? Just a crazy person thing to do. That's a crazy person thing to do. Okay, so when you click that log, like, what's going to happen? You're going to get a lawsuit immediately when you log in as a WP Engine customer. Nuts thing to do. Terrible idea. Just, I can't deplore that enough. Stupid, right? And then another really weird thing, and like, this is super weird and it's public now, so I can talk about it, but he tried to poach the WP Engine CEO, right? He legitimately, and I think from my understanding, he's still trying to. He's trying to poach, like, out of spite. That's what I'm understanding. Out of spite, trying to get the CEO of WP Engine to come over and be the CEO of WordPress.com, right? Now, that pissed off the person that was the CEO of WordPress.com or was running WordPress.com for the last 20 years or 15 years or something like that. So she left, obviously. That has now escalated to the point where there's been leaks that he's essentially blackmailing the CEO of WPEngine.com, saying that if she doesn't accept the job, he's going to tell the board that she works for that she was thinking about taking the job, therefore giving, like, less trust to her. Like, and she's denied ever, like, thinking about even taking it. So, like, that's crazy person territory. This
is like fucking House
Correct.
of Cards, like the show. This is like the fucking House of Cards, but with web admin
like,
stuff.
What's going on?
This is ridiculous.
Yeah, this is ridiculous, right? So there's other stuff. I'm not going to get too far into it. I think this is enough insanity for you to understand that the situation is not in any way, shape, or form small. WordPress is huge. And I just wanted to kind of summarize a little bit why I think this is really important. Okay. WordPress powers 40% of the web. We've talked about this. That's a low number, by the way. It could be more. Matt's putting arbitrary values on open source projects as a whole. He's saying, please contribute 8% of your profits. Please contribute 5% of your engineer's time. You need to do this. And he's limiting people from using his open source project that are not doing this. Now, he's not limiting everyone from not doing this. He's limiting a specific company. Again, that's what he's saying. But he could use this attack on anyone. Okay? He's attacking the customers directly here. He's not just attacking WP Engine. He's attacking the customers that are using WordPress directly. He's limiting their ability to update their plugins. He's yeeted a plugin from them that they trusted for a really long time and put his own plugin there that we don't know if he's going to maintain properly or not. We don't have any proof that he can maintain that plugin properly or not because he's not the owner of that plugin. So any features that are being built there are questionable. There's some security concerns there. Yes, he has engineers, which have all left now. I don't like that in any way, shape, or form from every single perspective. It's bullshit and it needs to be stopped, right? So this is putting a severe limit on open source, massive open source projects, because now can you trust any of them? Right? If this project crumbles, if the Epitone, like, this is the open source project, WordPress is open source. Like, if it crumbles, what's going to happen to the open source community? Like, what is actually going to happen? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, but that's the question that I want to put in people's minds that are thinking about open source right now. I'm not saying don't do open source because, again, open source is a critical aspect of web development. I don't think it's going away, but it is, I think, changing to some degree, and we need to start acting on that change, or we need to start thinking about what life is going to be like after the change, whatever, because this is insanity.
Well, yeah. This is something I do want to add is that if WordPress / Matt, whomever, wanted to add a custom post type / a custom field thing like advanced custom fields, I mean, there are other plugins that add custom fields. There are other plugins that work together. Like, I know that like ACF can plug into something like Elementor, and there's other things that can plug in. So there are like plugins that are like a part of different companies that work together and blah, blah, blah. Like, he could join in this. Like, if he goes, yo, a lot of people are using ACF, whatever, I would like this. Like, there's a way to go about this. It's called, you go to the ACF people and you go, yo, I really like your plugin. Is there a way to get this or something similar added to WordPress core? Like, you start a deal and you start, like, to me, that's how you do it. Like, you don't just come in and steal it. And I'm on the SCF now, Secure Custom Fields review page. This is right on WordPress.org. And there are some people that are advocating for this. There are many 1-star reviews that are saying they're not a fan of what happened. You know, this is a forced fork and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. But this person here says, as a strong advocate of free and open source software, I firmly believe that WordPress must always remain true to its roots as a freely accessible platform. The restrictive practices implemented by WP Engine with ACF have negatively impacted many users, contradicting the spirit of open source code. I commend WordPress for standing firm on its principles and safeguarding the freedom of software. It's crucial that the community continue to reject any attempts to undermine open access to the tools we all rely on. 5 stars.
That was written by Matt.
I mean, it wasn't. Like, I have a person's name.
It doesn't matter. That was probably Matt created that person's account and wrote it.
I mean, I don't know that.
I
but,
understand
it's
you don't know
possible.
that, but it is a possibility that he could have written that, because that sounds like his kind of word, like speak.
Well, there's a thing here too. There's another thing right below it. There's another 5-star review. ACF or SCF, I don't really care, but I do care about open source, and those who are seeking to make a lot of money off the back of open source software are actually contributing back to the open source community. That's why I'll be using this fork of ACF moving forward. See, the thing is though, is my problem is like if you're I don't know, like if something's open source, it's like it's open source. Like you've made it open source, you've made it free, whatever. The thing I don't understand is it's like, oh yeah, go make money with it, but like not too much.
Yeah. No, you can't. This is
It
what
doesn't
I'm
make
saying.
sense to me. It's like
that.
change the agreement.
Exactly.
Like change the agreement moving forward, or like have some sort of license, or however you work with it legally. Say, hey, you can use this for free, and you can actually sell things on here. You can make money. But if you hit 1 billion, or you hit 1 million, or you hit 100,000, you must contribute 8% back to us. I mean, companies do this. There are payment partners like Shopify and stuff, which will take a piece. They'll say, yo, we got to take a piece of that because we're processing the credit cards, we're doing this and that, we're doing whatever the agreement is. There's people that take a piece. Everybody takes a piece. The government takes a piece. This person takes a piece, etc. Like everybody gets a piece. That's the way it is. It's just, this is so bizarre. Like I actually would feel uncomfortable upgrading to secure custom fields.
Yeah.
Like doing the update.
Absolutely.
Like I have a couple of sites that we just do totally for fun. It has like 2 blog posts on it, just totally for fun. I use ACF on there to make those posts, the post type and the whatever. And it's like, I would feel weird pressing update now. Like I have to go and follow the email that I was sent on how to update ACF to make sure that it's still ACF. Like this is so bizarre. Like this is so unbelievably bizarre. Yep. There are so many like 1-star reviews here from just a couple of days ago, but there are people in here. Like there's like this person here, they have no idea what's going on. They literally just say very efficient and free, great plugin, 5 stars. So this is within the thing, right? Like within the well, God, I can't say that, but well, here's another one. I'll read this one, and this will be the last one I read. Years ago, the developer of the ACF plugin made a huge mistake and sold it to a hosting company. Delicious Brains then made the same mistake, by the way. And I so hope that the day will come when plugin developers become more responsible with their choices of whom to sell to. Anyways, the original ACF plugin is one of the most wonderful things that has ever happened in the WordPress landscape, and I welcome this change. That means the code base is in the hands of the community now. I also hope Automatic will give SCF special focus so that the development can keep up with that of the WP Engine owned and developed ACF. This will be competition for years, 5 stars. See, what's crazy to me about this though is it's like when you and I at some point, Mike, have had a conversation about WordPress, and I have several times advocated for WordPress core to have more features. I always thought that WordPress core, taken out of the box and installed, the self-hosted version, was too bare bones. Like even the page builder, too bare bones. I have to like go to a plugin to get more of the blocks or whatever they're called, right? Even Elementor, it's like I download Elementor, I get Elementor. I think even that's a little bit sometimes too bare bones, right? I always feel like these like a lot of these like builders and whatever are too bare bones. But I've never thought of my life, you know what? I would like to, as a part of the community, quote unquote, own Elementor. I go, no, I would like WordPress core to implement some of these features. And for Elementor, even though one's open source and one's for profit, I would like Elementor to compete with WordPress core because they will both make more features and make the process of making a website with WordPress better, because competition breeds better features and all the like everything else that comes with it, lower prices, etc. It's just weird to me that, I mean, like, why isn't Windows open source? Like to me it just doesn't make sense. I agree with open source. I agree with contributing to it. I understand that fully. It's just bizarre to me that it's just like, hey, you're not doing this and I want a piece. You can't, like, to me, it's like, you can't just say that. Like, if it was in the license,
yep,
fair enough. You can't just like randomly come out and be like, hey, I'm taking this. That'd be like if Samsung was like, hey man, like you've taken 4,000 photos on that camera. Like you generated 4,000 photos on your camera on your smartphone that we made, but it's our camera. So like we're disabling that. Please give us 8% of your paycheck. And then
it's the same.
But don't worry,
It's arbitrary.
your pictures are in the hands of the community now.
just pure arbitrary nonsense. I just want to end it on the fact that, like, I do believe that they're going to figure this out. I hope there's some resolution that appeases both sides to a certain degree. Like, I'm not a fan of like siding with a massive corporation that's private equity funded, like WP Engine. I don't think that they're the good guy in this conversation. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. Like, people have mentioned even in the reviews, like, I kind of agree with them a little bit. Like, selling your plugin to a corporation kind of sucks. I understand it, but like, it still kind of sucks. Like, you're making money from it. Yeah, you made a big bag more, whatever. But the point is, you can't just do arbitrary shit like this and expect trust from the community. You've ruined that trust. Now Matt has to go in and put a ton of work to build it back if that's the route he goes, or he has to step away from the project, in my opinion. Those are the two options at this point. It's a bad situation. I hope it gets resolved soon. Yeah, just a bad situation. Sorry, WordPress people out there. I'm kind of glad I'm not on it. Sorry, Matt, that has to deal with it a little bit. Thankfully, it's not.
Wait, which
you,
Matt? Me,
you, Matt. Yeah. Yeah, this whole time I was actually yelling at you. Yeah.
Matt. HTML things, Matt.
HTML things, Matt. Main Matt.
Oh, main Matt. Best Matt, actually.
Yeah.
This is a disaster. I mean, my closing statement is I still feel like the person in the city while the superheroes and villain fight, and I may or may not catch a stray. There's definitely a couple websites where I do not want to install secure custom fields. Thankfully, a lot of our ACF installations are done so with ACF Pro, which is different. And the email, I'm not going to get into all that, but the email that was sent to me by ACF outlines how it's different and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, that's kind of it. Like, I mean, that's kind of my closing statement is I hope these two titans like stop fighting, because I would still like to use WordPress for some sites. I still believe in using the right tool for the job, whether it's WordPress, Webflow, this, that, the other thing, up, down, left, right, center. I don't like to be like super loyal to one place. I like to just, again, use the right tool for the job. And I do have a certain degree of brand loyalty, but only when it's the right tool for the job. I'm not going to, for example, use WooCommerce for something that like literally just like it's a page that just says like coming soon. You know, that's foolish, right? Like one's an e-commerce tool, one's I could do that in HTML with like a header one, like a H1. So like, you know, just use the right tool for the job has always been sort of my thought on stuff like this, on website stuff like this. But I think that's it. We're going to conclude the episode. So this episode is being recorded on October 18th. That's listed on the website as well. If you go to htmlallthethings.com in the show notes, it tells you when the episodes have been recorded, just to let you know, because this situation may change, upset, be resolved. Who knows by the time that you actually listen to this. But it is now time to end our coverage of this. I hope that you enjoyed it. Remember that we are on Patreon if you want to support episodes like this. That is patreon.com/HTML, all the things. And many thanks to our $3 tier patrons, Tim from the Web Hacker on webhacker.com, Jason from Geek Life Radio via geekliferadio.com, Garrett Segal, Level Up Financial Planning via www.levelupfinancialplanning.com, and Magnus from YesWeb via yesweb.se. And last but not least, we'd like to give a shout out to Michael LaRocca, a contributing author on HTMLallthethings.com. Michael is the author of Self-Taught, the X Generation blog at selftaughttxg.com. Feel free to leave a comment or a review in the platform that you are listening to this on, and this outro will sign us off.
You've been listening to HTML All the Things podcast. Web development, web design, and small business. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. And we hope you appreciate that we talk to you like human beings. And we hope you had some fun. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit us up on social media. On Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon at HTML All the Things. And on Twitter at HTML Everything. Until next time, this is HTML All the Things, signing off.